Everybody is having a good, I think it's afternoon for everybody now, yeah. Just had to look at my clock. My name is Dale Rowley. I'm with QGate Software. As Brianna said, we are the publishers of Paribus Discovery and PowerEntry. What I'm going to do is kind of give you a little bit of an introduction to us as a company. QGate Software Limited is based on the south coast of England, and for almost the last 20 years they've been very much like Customer FX. They are a CRM consultancy that does implementations of CRM systems, including Infor CRM, which used to be Sales Logic. So they've been doing that for about 18 of those 20 years. And so they've got a lot of experience, frontline experience with customers and the problems that they encounter. And early on in their life, they found that they were answering the same questions over and over again. And so they kind of split the company into two divisions. One of them is the CRM consultancy, and the other, in the same building, in a lot of cases in the same rooms, is a development group. And the development group focuses on a couple of products, PowerEntry and Paribus being two of them. There's another one called IntelliCTI, which is a phone system integration product that, if you have any questions about that, we can talk about that afterwards. But we're really going to focus today on data quality issues. But so they developed these products, and about 15 years ago, we started representing those products here in North America. So QGate Software here in the U.S. has been around for over 15 years. And in fact, we've actually been working with Customer FX for those 15 years, as well as other CRM implementation partners here in North America. But Customer FX obviously has been around a long time and has a lot of deep experience with Infor CRM, as you well know. And so they've turned to us for solutions regarding data quality and phone integration for the last 15 years. So we've got a long-standing relationship with the team at Customer FX. Globally, we've got thousands of users using these products. As I said, we're based here in North America. I'm in Michigan. I've got another person here in Michigan. We've got an office in Southern California. And as I said, we do these solutions for data matching, data deduplication, as well as phone integration, or CTI, which is what that's generally called. So let's talk about today's agenda. The problem that we're going to talk about here is, as I said, duplicate data. Your data really is one of the most valuable assets that your company holds. Your CRM data in particular is often where you keep track of who you're doing business with, who you'd like to do business with, and where your future revenue is coming from if you're tracking pipeline opportunities and things like that. So it's really important that you take care of this data to maintain its value over time and the value to the organization. Now, when we look at the issues regarding data quality, one of the most important is keeping duplicates out, and that's really where we focus in this case. Now, yeah, I'm going to do this virtual. Can I get a show of hands here? If we were all, imagine we're all sitting in the same room. Raise your hand if you don't have any duplicates within your database. Yeah, I didn't think so. So everybody who collects data has an issue with duplicates. Sometimes it's a little issue, sometimes it's a large issue. A lot of it has to do with where the data comes from, how it gets in there, how many people touch it, how coordinated they are in following rules regarding the maintaining data quality, those types of things. And there is some duplicate detection built into Infor CRM, but admittedly it's pretty limited in its capabilities. And then, you know, there's many external deduplication processes that you could use, but a lot of times they actually remove good data. So without some assistance, preventing duplicates often forces users to take lots of extra steps just to do their daily tasks within the CRM system. So what this discussion today is, obviously the title is Keeping Infor CRM Duplicate Free. Let's talk about some solutions. Now, even before I get into what our offerings are, because I really like to treat this more as a discussion about the issue in general, And there are lots of things that you can do, even without adding in something, from us, a lot of things that you can do to help yourselves. Things like putting in place pick lists instead of allowing people to enter in random data. If you have pick lists for states or countries, and that's the only way the data can get in is choose it from the pick list, you're going to have a lot more standardization within your data. There are other tools out there like licensees from the U.S. Postal Service. There's a number of companies out there. Satori is one. There's a thing called Quick Address. It used to be called QAS, and now it's part of Experian. These are licensees of the U.S. Postal Service where you can either add a tool into Infor CRM or send your data out, get it cleansed, put back in. You've got Dun & Bradstreet, you've got Hoover's, you've got all sorts of these data verification and standardization products. Admittedly, a lot of those are very expensive subscription payments that you have to make, and so some of them are good, some of them are over people's budgets. But those solutions are out there. Putting in rules so that as users are entering in data, you've got certain required fields or certain user behaviors that are required. They have to check things before they enter. They have to have, you can't enter in a lead without certain critical pieces of information, whether it be email addresses because that's how you tend to communicate with your customers, or physical addresses that are checked against the company's website or something like that. So there are a lot of things that you can do that are, the cost of them is some time and some forethought and some training with your users. But let's talk about the solutions that we have today, because that's really what we're here about. Paribus Discovery is a batch tool. So it's a tool that an individual or a small group of individuals within your organization would use to identify duplicates. So it finds matches within the system, and then it provides processes to merge account records or contact records or lead records directly within the CRM system. So you don't have to export things out and then import things back in or anything like that. It works directly within the system. And so, like I said, that's something that usually a small group of people would use. In a lot of cases, your organization, a lot of the users, the Infor CRM users, don't even know that that's going on. I mean, I'm a firm believer in communication. Yeah, we're going through this process of cleaning things up, so they're aware that what they see today looks different than it did yesterday because we clean things up. And we'll talk about how we clean things up in a few minutes. But PowerEntry is the preventative side of things. So think about Paribus as I've got this mess and I want to get it cleaned up. Whereas PowerEntry is, let's do our best to try and avoid this mess continuing on in the future. So it's a solution that actually becomes part of your Infor CRM system to provide some very intelligent fuzzy search capabilities to help your users find what they're looking for. When they're searching for an account or a contact, being able to actually present them with who this looks like it is, and some real-time identification of potential duplicates during the data entry process. So kind of raising a flag while someone is entering in a new record to tell them, hey, it looks like you're entering in somebody that's already here. As we talked about before in one of the earlier slides, there are some basic duplicate avoidance processes built in or functions built into Infor CRM, but they're, I don't want to be rude, they're kind of pedestrian. They're, yeah, match on exactly this or exactly that, and exactly is not how data works. People will enter in all sorts of different things. They'll spell things wrong. Somebody will enter their own information on a website, and today their email is billw@gmail.com, and then the next day it's William Wozniewski at abc.corp. So those types of things happen. So matching on exact email addresses sometimes just doesn't work either. So that's where Paribus comes in. So it's or I'm sorry, where PowerEntry comes in as far as the avoiding duplicates at the point of data entry. So what's this all based on? It's our matching technology. So the Paribus match engine is actually application and data source independent. So although we'll be talking about it in the realm of Infor CRM today, it can actually find matches in any SQL formatted data source or sources. So it can be Access or other SQL Server databases or Oracle databases or DB2 databases. As long as it's an SQL type structure in the data, Paribus can be used to find matches. However, it was originally built some 14 years ago specifically to solve duplicate issues for one of our SalesLogix customers back then. And although we started building it for them, we built it with the concept of this is just going to be a generic tool that not just this customer can use, but any SalesLogix customer can use. And then it's opened up to other data sources along the way. So we made it generic enough so that you can compare your Infor CRM data, or you can compare other data to your Infor CRM data, or other data to other data. So we've had customers that use it primarily for their, a few years ago, for SalesLogix implementation, but they also had an Oracle data warehouse. And so they wanted to find and merge duplicates within it. And so they used Paribus for Discovery for the matching, and then we worked with them to build a special plugin to do the merging in their Oracle data warehouse. So it is something that can extend out beyond the Infor CRM world. It's very configurable. You can define what data elements you want to match on. It's really intelligent in the way it matches. For instance, it'll treat company names differently than it treats people's names or address elements when comparing records to find matches. It has the ability to match on multiple elements at the same time, so you can compare account names that are similar where their address is also similar or a phone number is an exact match, things like that. So you can combine different types of elements in the matching process, and each one is treated like its own type. So when you're comparing company names and then addresses, the companies are treated as companies and the addresses are treated as address to get a lot better matching capability. And you can adjust how fuzzy it is. So running through the first time, you might want to look for the really obvious ones and clean those up, because that'll just take no time. You don't even have to think about whether or not, it's right or not, because they're so close in similarity that, yeah, those are obviously matches. It's that type of thing. So it returns matching scores that you can then take a look at to determine whether or not you agree. The matching, as I said, is pretty smart. It understands things like synonyms, abbreviations, and acronyms like Bill, Billy, William, and Will, or Bob, Robert, Robbie, Bobby. For companies, IBM and I period, B period, M period, and the International Business Machines Corporation are all considered very similar, not because it knows anything about the company IBM, it's just because the structure of those names provides similarities that Paribus can identify. It includes some gender analysis like Paul and Paula or Daniel and Danielle, so names may not match across genders even though the names are phonetically similar. It allows for sequence variations like the First National Bank of Arizona or Arizona First National Bank. It handles phonetic matching, is the name Dixon, D-I-X-O-N, or D-I-C-K-S-E-N or D-I-C-K-S-O-N. There's different variations phonetically of the way things can be spelled, and so it handles things like that. And it also deals with data segmentation. So the name QGate is a great example. Is it Q-G-A-T-E, one word, or is it Q space G-A-T-E, or Q hyphen G-A-T-E, etc. So it's pretty intelligent in how it handles all of the matching. So some examples here. These are good examples where all of these contact records would be considered very similar. And we'll see some live examples when we go into the actual live demo here. But you get the idea. I don't want to spend too much time on slides. So the slideshow is pretty short here. So let's take a look at what this looks like in use. I've just got a couple of screenshot slides here, and then we'll get into the PowerEntry and then get into live products. So really, the two pieces of this are identifying the matches and then making your decisions and merging. So at the start, the CRM admin user, or somebody who is knowledgeable about the structure of the database, where is the data stored and that kind of thing, would set up Paribus to run what we call match sessions. Generally, because of the way that Infor CRM is set up, you have accounts, and then under those accounts are many contacts and history and notes and attachments and opportunities and all the other things that are hanging off accounts. You would start by cleaning up the accounts, and then all of that stuff gets reassigned into the what we call a primary, or the surviving account. And then you go and do the same thing and go down to the contact level and look for duplicate contacts, because if you had two IBM accounts, then you had a Tom Watson and one and a Thomas Watson and the other. Now you combine them, and it looks like you created a duplicate Tom Watson, but those two Tom Watsons were there all the time. You just didn't see them as duplicates because they were sitting under different accounts. And so you'd use Paribus Discovery to find those duplicate contact records and merge those together with everything hanging off of the contacts being consolidated into the survivor. And then, so once we've identified those duplicates, then we have the capability of reviewing the results. So because we're allowing for this fuzziness, there may be some things that you disagree with. And so we have a review process where a user can look at the groups of duplicates that Paribus found and say yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down, or choose which one. There's really two decisions. Are these duplicates? And if they are, which one should be the primary that survives, that all the information gets consolidated into? And so we have a review screen where you have the ability to pick and choose what elements of data you want to see to help you make those decisions. And then we have a plugin that is would be run to process that batch of groups. And so the first step of setting it up is usually somebody who's maybe a little bit more technical, not necessarily a developer. I'm a sales guy and I can do it. So you don't have to be that smart. But that's somebody who understands the structure of your Infor CRM database would be the one that would be working on the setup. And then it's usually a business user who goes through the review, because they understand, if I'm looking at these two records, which one has to survive? Maybe they know the account managers, or they know what the import source was, and this one wins over that one. There's business reasons why you would choose one or the other. And then it's a matter of, now we have the power to massage potentially thousands of records in one big batch. Then it goes back to somebody with a little bit more responsibility on the technical side to say, okay, yeah, we're going to make sure everything's lined up properly and then merge these. And that's where that type of person would run this plugin that does the merging. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about why the Paribus merge is so much more comprehensive and complete than a standard out-of-the-box Infor CRM merge, because we do a whole lot more than what Infor CRM does in a merge. Our goal is to create the best possible resulting record without losing anything. And as you know, if you merge records in Infor CRM, there's going to be data that gets thrown away because there's just no room for it anymore. Well, we've made room, and we'll talk about that when we get to that part here in the demo. So, what now? I think everybody here is existing Infor CRM implementations that are up and running. But if you're new and you've got new stuff still coming in, Paribus is something that can be used to help within a new system, or with additional data imports to dedupe the new data that's brought in against the existing records that were already there. We have something we call the Paribus quarantine process, which is more of a workflow for what to do when you're importing records. So rather than comparing before you do the import, because as I said, if you're comparing data separately, which Paribus can do, you're comparing it separately before you do the import, then is the decision not to bring any of that data in if it's got a match, or are there other things that are associated with it that you do want to bring in? And so if you import it and quarantine it inside Infor CRM by giving it a different ownership, so nobody sees those new records yet, and then comparing those records against the ones that are visible, merging the duplicates, and then releasing or making visible, changing the ownership of those records that are remaining, that's in a lot of cases a better process for bringing in new records and bringing them in clean. And then, some people, they run Paribus, one big project to get things cleaned up, and then they use it as a maintenance tool. So they may run it every week, every month, a couple times a year. It kind of depends, again, on how data is getting in, how often new data gets brought in, what kind of processes you go through, those types of things. So everybody's a little bit different. There's no one answer as to how often you might want to use it. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about PowerEntry. PowerEntry is really two components or two pieces of it. One is intelligent searching. I mentioned this before, of helping your users find what they're looking for, and the other is a proactive duplicate avoidance system at the point of data entry. And both of those are really important. One is because, as you know, you have different types of users. Some users are more conscientious than others. They will actually look before they try to enter a new record in. And then there's the other 85% of the users who just enter in whatever they want, right? Nobody has problems like that. Consider those training opportunities. Is that how it's termed, or grounds for termination? That depends on how angry you get. But in addition to all of the existing search capabilities inside Infor CRM, PowerEntry gives users the additional matching capabilities that we were talking about to help the users find what they're looking for. In this screenshot here, I was looking for this guy, Bob, who I know he said he was from California. I can't remember his last name. I can't even remember his company name. I type in Bob and CA, and as you can see, it found Robert Dixon, Roberto Pemblett, and Bobby Dixon, all somewhere San Ramon or Santa Clara, California. Even though California was spelled out in one case, and you know, we've got Bob and Robert and Roberto and Bobby as different variants of the same name. So all I typed in was Bob and CA, and this is what IntelliSearch is what the searching capability is called. So it adds this in. You can still do a begins with search on a name just like you do. We'll talk about that when we get to the product. But this kind of gives you a little idea of how it works. And then the duplicate avoidance at the point of data entry. In this case, I typed in Bill Hendricks, spelled like the famous guitarist, at Amtech with a K, and Lehman, L-E-M-A-N, and as you can see, it found a William Hendricks, spelled completely differently at Amtech and Lehman. Everything is spelled differently. So out of those four potential names, Bill, Hendricks, Amtech, and Lehman, all four of them were misspelled, and we found what we were looking for. So this would be something that says, yeah, potential duplicate contact exists at this account. Just go here. If you want to go here, just click on William Hendricks' name, rather than adding a new record. Now, if it wasn't that person, then you could go through the process and continue on. But it's kind of like I said, raising a red flag for users before they enter in something that looks like it's a duplicate in the system. Okay? So let's kind of step away from that and go into, actually what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with PowerEntry, and then I'll go to Paribus. So if I'm looking at doing a search, let's just use this as an example. You can see this in the background. We were talking about the different variants. If I just type in account starting with JAE, I get nothing. Okay, I could do contains. I could, you know, there aren't any accounts in my system that are JAE, contain those characters. But notice there's an additional, you know, I did the standard lookup. There's an additional option here for IntelliSearch on account. So if I choose that and I type in JAE and do a search, it says, oh, you've got a J period, A period, E period, the JAE Corp, Jupiter Astronomy Equipment, Jupiter Astronomy Equipment again, Jupiter Astronomy Equipment spelled poorly, another poorly spelled one, and the Jupiter Astronomy Equipment Corporation. Okay, so it found 6 records for what looks like JAE. Similarly, at the contact level, we add another variant here for searching for a contact. If I type in something like Bob Dixon and do a search on Bob Dixon, it finds Bobby Dixon and Robert Dixon and Rob Dixon. So you can see it's using that intelligent matching that we talked about when we were talking about Paribus in this real-time interactive mode for finding what the users are looking for. So it's real straightforward, real simple. It just adds another search capability within the system. Now, we talked about the duplicate avoidance at the point of data entry. If I go to enter in a new contact within the system, notice we've kind of put in an interim screen here so the user can put in what they think they know. So in this case, I'm going to do Louis Balbo at Abbott. Okay, so I'll say I want to try and see if I want to enter this in. I could fill in more information if I wanted to. But when I click check existing, it says I found a Lou Balbo, again, spelled differently, and Abbott, A-B-O-T and A-B-B-O-T-T Limited. Now maybe I've got Lou on the phone and I say, yeah, Lou, you say you've done business with us before? Oh, well here, are you the VP of Sales at Abbott Limited in Chicago? And he goes, oh, no, boy, what a coincidence. That's not me. So I say, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe you're not in the system. Oh, well, actually, we've got Abbott Limited and Abbott Worldwide. And he says, oh, yeah, I'm at Abbott Worldwide. So now I can just say, click here, and it starts entering in that new contact at the existing account. So I didn't create a duplicate contact. I didn't create a duplicate account. It really steps you through the logical process of doing that. If I were to do look for matching records on this, it's depending upon his email address or what I typed in, there's a slim chance that would have happened. Okay, spelling the name wrong and spelling the company name wrong. So as you can see, this is just kind of a proactive, again, raise a flag saying, hey, it looks like this person that you're trying to enter is already in the system. So the searching is for the conscientious users that actually try and look, and then there's the proactive duplicate avoidance. So very straightforward, very simple to demonstrate. It's something that gets installed. A little executable gets pushed out to every one of the users, and then there's some bundles that get attached and deployed from the database side. Okay, so that's PowerEntry. So now let's go to Paribus. And Paribus, as I said, is a batch tool. It's not something that gets seen by most people. There is some visibility of it in the client just for extra information. Oh, and I didn't check that to verify whether or not that was, let me just pull open, I'm going to leave that page. We'll pull open a contact here and see if it's been deployed in my image here. More tabs. There we go. Okay, so there's another tab. This is the visibility that would show up in the client. There's another tab called the repository. Actually, there's two, the audit and the repository. And we'll get to what these contain here in a second. But that's the only thing that people would see, and that's potentially, it's if you deployed those extra tabs to all of the users, they would have visibility of that. Okay, so Paribus, there's really 4 steps to using Paribus as a tool. But as I said, it's a tool that allows you to compare records. And I'm pointing at this match sets icon here, this Venn diagram. So take you back to your middle school or high school geometry and talk about Venn diagrams. And I would compare data set A against data set B, looking for where there's an overlap, that type of thing. So it's a good way to think about how Paribus works. Paribus allows you to compare A against B, looking for where there's overlaps, and those overlaps are duplicate records. So A and B can be virtually anything. Something like, if I'm looking for, the example I'm going to run through here is I want to find some duplicate accounts in my system, and to me a duplicate account would be an account that's similar in name and similar in address. Because, in my company, every IBM branch is a separate account. Now, some organizations wouldn't use that. They'd say, no, there's one IBM. It's based in Armonk, New York. That's the only IBM account. Everybody else are just contacts with addresses at different locations. So depending upon how you look at your data, again, no one right answer, how you look at your data would determine how you might want to set this up. But as I said, this was created specifically to start with for a particular SalesLogix customer of ours, and so we built it for doing that right out of the gate. And so because of that, we have preset settings specifically for working with SalesLogix, now Infor CRM. So Everything that I'm going to show you here is straight out of the box. If you say, I want to use this with Infor CRM, you would import in these preset definitions and you'd be ready to go to run what we call a match session. So a match session is this comparison against A and B. So if I wanted to, and I'll get down to some of the detail behind this, but if I want to create a new match session, the first thing it says is, oh, what kind of session do you want to run? Do you want to do an account name match, a contact name match, or a lead name match? Okay. So why does it ask this? Because these are templates. We call them data or match set templates here. And a match set template, the way to think about it is, it's kind of like think way back when people used to use fax machines. Actually, they're still using them in banking all the time, but most people don't use them anymore. But when you wanted to send out a fax, you'd want to create a cover sheet. And that cover sheet would have, your logo and your name and your phone number and your fax number. And then it'd have places for you to fill in the blanks of who am I sending it to, how many pages is it, what's their fax number, and some notes. Okay? But every time you created that fax cover sheet, you didn't want to have to do it from scratch. Find your logo, draw lines and boxes, all that. You'd have a document template from whatever word processor you used that you were just going to fill in the blanks. Everything would already be there except who am I sending it to, how many pages, and what's their fax number. So that's kind of like what this is. When I'm looking for duplicate accounts, it's going to be real similar every time. I'm going to be comparing account names and then some other things as secondary conditions. And might be filtering it down to, this time I'm going to look at my Northeast Territory, or this time I'm just going to look at the state of California, or this time I'm going to look at accounts that are owned by this team. Or you can break it down however you want, but you might want to filter it down. Maybe I want to compare accounts that have opportunities against accounts that don't have opportunities. Because if I find matches between those two groups, if I'm looking at an account that has an opportunity, and there are other accounts in there that are the same account but they don't have opportunities, that account that has an opportunity probably has better tombstone information. The name's right and the address is right, because we're doing business with them, we're active with them. Or maybe it's accounts that are customers versus non-customers, or whatever. And there's some sample filters in here, customers in California, non-customers, things like that, just as examples so you can see how they're created. But in this case, I'm just going to say, no, I'm going to compare just all my accounts against all my accounts. I don't have a very big database. It's 1,300 and some account records in this demo database. But so it sets it up automatically, saying, okay, I'm going to be comparing account names, and I can adjust the similarity of how similar do the account names have to be for me to have Paribus consider them as potential duplicates. So this is a nice, easy slider. Remember I said that sometimes some of the people who set this up might have more technical knowledge. Okay, well, once you get beyond that, it's pick lists and sliders and checkboxes and things like that. What do you want to call this? Sales test account match 80% name, and let's do 85% address. I can call it whatever I want, okay? And I have the ability here to slide this up and down and make it however similar on the account name I wish. It goes from 60, which is, you might look at things Paribus thought were similar and scratch your head and wonder why, to 100%, which is almost exact. We have exact matching, which doesn't use any fuzziness or any of the intelligence of Paribus. But 100% match means they have to be exactly the same except for capitalization. Once we start dropping down lower than that, then we start allowing for more variation in similarity. To give you some examples of what this means, at 90%, that would be things like IBM and I.B.M. and International Business Machines and the International Business Machines Corporation. All of those would be caught in that 90% or above. So even though IBM and the International Business Machines Corporation aren't 90% similar, in Paribus' scoring they are. Okay, so I'm going to go beyond that and allow for even more variation So a little bit worse spelling and phonetics and things like that would be allowed for. But to try and avoid a lot of false positives and to say, yeah, the IBM in New York and the IBM in Chicago aren't considered potential duplicates, I'm going to also add a secondary condition. I have one here called the full address. And all of these things that you're seeing here are built within the setup that's built specifically for Infor CRM. But they can be added onto. You can add your own conditions. You can add, you can compare on custom stuff that you put into the database. Remember, it's data agnostic. It really doesn't even know this is Infor CRM other than I've made these labels say it's Infor CRM. It's just data in a database. So I'm going to say, yeah, the full address also has to be similar, and I can adjust the similarity threshold on that independently. Now remember, this is comparing addresses using rules that make sense for addresses, and this is comparing account names using rules that are appropriate for finding similar account names. Okay. I also can tell it to automatically identify a primary group member, being the survivor, either from A or B. And in the case where I said, A had opportunities and B didn't, that would be a logical choice. In this case, A and B are the same set of data. It's my unfiltered, all my accounts, and so it's an arbitrary choice. I found an IBM. Is there anybody else that looks like IBM? Oh, the first one is A, everybody else is B. Okay, so A would be the nominated survivor, but you can override that. Okay, so that's it for the setup. So that's how long it takes. Now, it'd be a lot faster if I wasn't yammering on about all the description of it, but you can see how quick it is with all the preset stuff to start looking at your data. So I'm going to go ahead and run that session, and it tells me what I'm running, my test account match, 80% name, 85% address, and I say go. And so it's looking through, as I said, my 1,382 account records, and it's performing those match operations. So it's looking at account names. When it finds account names that are similar, kind of temporarily groups them together, and then it looks at their addresses. If they meet the same criteria of that in this case, 85% similarity, then it says, oh, okay, we'll keep this group together, and then I'll collect a bunch of other information that I told it to in the setup, like, what's the website, and what's their main phone, and how many contacts do they have, and what was the import source, and some other things that my reviewer might want to see. I had a slide there of the review screen that was up there briefly, but that's where that gets built, is in this match session. So it says in this single-page summary report that comes up after every match session, on this date at this time, it took 47 seconds to run through my 1,382 account records, and it found 48 groups with 110 members, or about 4.5% of my data seems to be duplicated. Now, 4.5% may sound like a little to you. It may sound like a lot to you. And we've seen the range. We've had people that, yeah, they got 15% duplicates, but they never mail anything. They really don't care. And I've got other customers who, one of our Paribus users won a corporate award at her company because she saved the company $120,000 one year by using Paribus to clean up their data. They're an insurance company, and every time they brought in a new group, they would have to send out welcome packets, and if there were duplicates, they'd send out the $6 welcome packet to somebody who already had a welcome packet. And so they used Paribus to clean all that up, and she ended up winning an award. So everybody has a different threshold of pain, and I'll stop right here because I want to make an offer to everybody here. If you would like to have something like this run against your database, just talk to Brianna or Scott or one of the customer FX team, and they can coordinate for us to connect with you over a web session. It takes about, if you have the right credentials for your computers, it takes about a minute to download it. It takes about 2 minutes to install it, and it takes about another 5 minutes to configure it, and then we can start running some samples to see what your data looks like. So within a half an hour to an hour web session with us explaining things along the way, we can get you an idea of what that number might look like for you, how many duplicates might be in your system. So is this something that you want to spend some time and energy and a little bit of money dealing with? to get cleaned up, or is it an okay thing for you and you don't have to worry about it so much? At least you'd know after this what your data looks like. Okay, so I'll just leave that out there as an offer, as a follow-up if you'd like to. So what did it find? We just saw some statistics there, but we really haven't looked at anything. Let's go ahead and now, so I mentioned earlier that there were 4 steps. The first is setting it up. The second step is running a match session. So the first step, you got these building blocks that you just keep reusing. You're adding different filters or looking at different sets of data or running it at different thresholds, but it's really reusing a lot of the same building blocks that we gave you to start with. So that's the setup, is the first step. The second step is running the match session, basically telling your computer to use Paribus to do what you told it to do in the setup. The third is reviewing the results, and that's where we're headed now. And that's where I get a chance to say, yeah, these are duplicates that I want to merge, and this is the one that I want to be the survivor in that group. And the fourth is processing those decisions. So merging, in the case of cleaning up your data, merging those records. Okay, so those are the 4 steps. Set up, run a match session, review the results, and merge. Okay, so I'm on to the review. So I want to review what Paribus found. And so here you can see there's that 48 groups. Here's a list of all of those groups. And then there's how many members are in that group. And then if you look in the upper right here, you can see who are the members in that group. So we've got 3 OneVision accounts. And down here is the one that was nominated as primary. So in this case, we just chose A. It was an arbitrary A. But again, if this was customers versus non-customers, this would be your customer. This would be one of your 2, in this case, non-customers. So this would always be your customer if you had that filtered in that direction, and this would never be a customer. So now I have the ability to take a look through and say, okay, do I agree? Do I disagree? What's in red is what Paribus matched on. Okay, the name and address. What's in blue are those other things I said I told Paribus to gather up from my reviewer, like the web address, the phone numbers, the date it was created, where it came from, how many contacts. This is totally defined by you. These are just suggestions that people generally want some of these things. You delete them, you add other things. I want a count of open opportunities. I want a count of how many XYZ custom things we have against that account. Okay? It can be anything. It's just SQL queries. Okay? So I can take a look through. If I agree, let's say I agree all 3 of these are duplicates, and this one, the OneVision, this is their logo. It's a numeral OneVision, all one word kind of thing. Okay, I just double click on that, or I can hit the green check mark, or I can hit the F9 key. There's different ways of doing it, but it's checking it off and telling Paribus, when I go to that 4th step of merging, process these accounts this way. Keep this one, so it'll have this name and this primary address and this main phone and this fax, and take everything from this account and everything from this account and merge them over in, and then either deactivate, meaning hide, change the ownership, or delete the duplicates. You have a choice at the point of merge. So now, when I said we do a much better job of merging than what SalesLogix or Infor CRM merge function does. If you were to merge these records using the Infor CRM merge function, this one has a main phone, this one has a main phone, there's no room for 2 main phones in the main phone field, so this gets thrown away. Okay? Different fax number, that gets thrown away. Okay? This one had a different, this has the same account manager, they all have the same account, but if this account had a different account manager, that record of that would be gone because there's no room for it. There's only one account manager ID on an account. All of the one-to-many stuff gets moved over, whether you're using the Infor CRM merge or ours. All the contacts will move, all the notes and history and attachments and things like that. With a Paribus merge, we have a repository, and that's what I was talking about here, the merge repository. So if there are things that there wasn't any room for, we would say, in the account table, there was a main phone that had this other phone number. And it was brought in on this date from this session. And notice this last switch date, maybe the phone number that's down there is better than the phone number that's up there, and you don't want to go through every account as you're making a choice to merge and try to figure out what's the best phone number, because you may never call that account again. But when you do call that account, If the number is not right, oh, is there another number we have? Dial that one. Yeah, that one's good. You click this little recycle button and it swaps the values. So not only is it there, you can very quickly put it in its place. It knows where it came from. It knows where it has to go. Okay, so that repository is a key to how Paribus does things so much better. Okay, we're getting low on time. Let's just use the same example. Maybe this one doesn't, I mean, it looks like the same, but maybe for some reason I can't merge this one into this. I can exclude that from the group. Or maybe this one is the one that needs to be the primary. I can just double click there and it moves it into the primary position and makes this one the duplicate that everything will be merged into this one vision account. If I disagree with the whole group, I just hit it with the red X. Maybe I've got some questions on some of these things, and so I can put question marks on them, and that can be to remind myself that I'm just going to try and get through all the ones that are easy to make decisions on, and once, oh, I got to research that one a little bit more, I can mark it with a question mark. The only things that will get processed in the merge are ones with green check marks. Okay? So you've got all this, some examples here. Remember the JAE accounts that we saw. Here's a group of 4 Jupiter Astronomy equipment accounts. Now, why is there only 4 and not 6 or 7? Or 7, I think, in Infor CRM, and that's because these 4 are all on Bollinger Canyon Road in San Ramon, California, and these 3 are on Market Street in San Francisco. They're all in California, but the addresses were different enough to separate them into 2 groups, but group them together as 2 groups of potential duplicates. Okay, so that's where the not only looking at the name but also looking at the address can orient things in a proper way. Okay, now I could close this and it's all stored in a SQL Server database that's the back end to Paribus. If I come back to that review, it's exactly how it was. If I had, this case it's only 48 groups, there's 1 page, I can set bookmarks where I left off. And there's all sorts of other things that we don't really have time for if I want to leave some time for questions. But the last step of this is you go to Tools, Plugins, Paribus for Sales Logics, Account Cleansing, and I'd have to change this. This is on the wrong server. Well, here, I'm just going to run through it here just to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. I'm in the wrong database. So this is the merge part of it. I'm not going to merge records because I screw up all my demo data, and the duplicates that I had there aren't there anymore. But this is the merge end of things. This plugin is purpose-built for merging accounts and contacts in Infor CRM. It still says Sales Logics from that, but it works with 8.2, 8.21. So we keep up with, as a Sales Logics Infor CRM partner, we keep up with all the latest releases. We're a beta tester and all that. So you can be guaranteed that we're going to stay up with it. But you just say, yeah, I want to add a cleansing session, and you choose a match session that you want to cleanse from, that kind of thing. And then it say, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep the duplicates and hide them, or do I need to synchronize, yes or no? We are going to leave an audit trail inside of Infor CRM that says this account was merged into this account on this date, this time by the administrator in this Paribus match session, or cleansing session. We will also create a history record, if you choose to, that everybody would see. So for those people who aren't looking here in the Paribus audit for details, it would be a regular old notes and history record. So I talked a little too long and didn't get to actually merging something, but I think you got an idea of how it works and how well it takes care of things within Infor CRM. So touch base here a little bit on resources. QGateSoftware.com website, you can find out a lot more information. There's product tours, PDF brochures and product tours. There's screenshots. There's links to video demos, things like that. We have a knowledge base which covers both PowerEntry and Paribus, and a tele-CTI, tips and tricks and things like that. We've done kind of lots of tips on using Paribus Discovery. Yeah, the YouTube channel. You can send an email to us. Use the QGateSoftware.com website here for the US. But really, the way to get more information is to contact your customer FX rep, and they can answer any questions. So I'm going to stop talking here for a second and turn to Scott and Brianna to find out were there any questions that were posted.
Thanks, Dale. I just got myself off mute. Right now, and if anyone has a question, please go ahead and post that. We do have a couple minutes left here. The only questions